Doing well. Welcome to another live stream. What you're looking at here is a protest in Turkey where protesters attempted to overrun a U.S. airbase. And so obviously that has some major implications. Protesters were dispersed via tear gas and water cannons, as you can see here in this footage. And this is just one example of a broader move towards global unrest as these Israeli attacks in Gaza continue. We are seeing pro-Palestinian riots, in this case, protest elsewhere. And this is going to be putting some significant pressure on the governments of the Arab nations. And so, listen, if this is all a little doom and gloom for you, just a little preface to today's video, then, and you just want to talk about, stacking gold and silver, then check out the rest of the videos on the channel. I mean, we literally have hundreds of videos where we talk about gold and silver bars, coins, rounds, all that stuff. But right now, with so much going on in the world, it just seems like, that's not the type of content to be producing right now. Let me know what you think. If you want to just get back to that kind of content, put a 1 in the chat. If you like these updates, put a 2, because, I was trying to take a little time today to just relax, hang out with the family. We did a little family outing. It was a good time, really enjoyed it. And listen, I advise everybody to do the same, while times are good, because we are headed on a path towards a major regional war in the Middle East, and it's going to change the life for all of us, the standard of living, the style of life. There's that potential. And so, I just want to talk about some of these developments and keep you up to date, because I got home today and I started just kind of going through the news, trying to get up to speed. And it really is just shocking how much can happen in a weekend. It really is incredible, because, you blink and you look away and so much has happened. But of course, part of getting prepared for what's coming is having some hard, tangible assets outside of the financial system. Banks are failing as well. It's not just a war that's brewing. We've got lots of problems that we're facing at the moment. So if you do want to get some gold and silver, make sure you check out today's video sponsor, sdbullion.com. Right now, new customers can get gold or silver at spot by visiting sdbullion.com/new. And I do just want to say a big thank you to everybody chiming in on the chat there, helping wake up the algorithm, get this information out there. Please smash that like button. If you haven't done that yet, please consider subscribing to the channel, because I think that this information is worth spreading. So this is going to X here, formerly Twitter, a protest in Washington, D.C., 300,000 marching in support of Palestine, demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, to be fair, these protests that we're seeing in Washington, D.C., largely peaceful, seemingly. I haven't seen too much violent unrest in the U.S., but in the Middle East, of course, it's another story. We had those protests in Turkey, and so, you can kind of compare this to what's going on there. The protests in Turkey were very interesting in one sense. So there is this organization, the IHH, Humanitarian Relief Foundation. It's an Islamist Turkish aid agency. And they actually organized a convoy to travel to the airbase there in the Adana province in southern Turkey, the ones we were watching just a moment ago, to protest Israel and the U.S. support of Israel. Now, I thought it was really interesting what the president of the IHH said. He was addressing those crowds, the ones who we just watched try to overrun the U.S. airbase there. And he said this: "Friends, it is wrong to throw rocks or do similar things, because both the police and soldiers would want to go to Gaza and fight, and they will go when the time comes. Our rage is huge. We cannot hold it in, but Turkey is doing what it can." And so think about that. This guy who's the president of an aid relief agency who helped organize that protest that kind of devolved into that riot that you saw there, he's saying that Turkish soldiers or Turkish police will be going to Gaza when the time comes. So, think about the implications of that and some of the pressures that some of the leaders in the Arab world are facing as their populations become increasingly, unrestful. I don't know what the word to describe it is, agitated perhaps. But there's going to be a lot of pressure for them to eventually intervene here and do something. We're seeing Turkey, excuse me, Turkey recalling their Israeli ambassadors as relations there begin to devolve. Now, it's interesting what's going on in Turkey right now. They're experiencing unrest. You saw there's protests there. Turkey's a NATO member, so they do have U.S. bases within their country there. Of course, more targets for potential attack. Israel also has just withdrawn their ambassadors from Turkey, so a significant chilling of relations between these two countries. Turkey's also experiencing a tremendous inflation right now. I believe they're having something like maybe high double digits, low triple digits inflation. So, what better excuse than a war for the leadership there to kind of galvanize the population who is already on edge, likely, with the economic situation that they are experiencing. Someone in the chat there says it's not far-fetched to imagine I won't use this word, but FF event occurring during one of these protests. I have a feeling that word FF might become a bit of a no-no on the algorithm soon, so I'm going to refrain from saying that word, but yeah, that's a real possibility. The IHH is the aid organization, Alan. Okay, now this is what the protests are about. There's all these attacks on targets within Gaza, which are resulting in significant civilian casualties. Israel strikes ambulance near Gaza hospital. There have also been some reports, I believe, of attacks on aid camps. Who knows? Maybe Hamas is using these people as human shields. I don't know. I'm not there. I don't really have a take on it. Who am I to judge anybody? But this is what the unrest is about. And it doesn't seem like there's much chance of a ceasefire anytime soon. And we're going to get into how this rhetoric between the U.S. and Iran is really on the rise. The U.S. just passed, the House passed a resolution that looks like it may be authorizing force against Iran. We're going to cover that in just a moment as well. I mean, there's so much to get into today. It's just this stuff happens at such a rapid pace. Let's see here. We got, these are some other images from those protests. So the president now has got a new nickname, Genocide Joe. So, people here in the U.S. are becoming more and more fractured. I mean, I don't even know how really these issues are breaking down between left and right. I know everything does in this age of tribalism, but, this is a new moniker for this guy, so that's interesting. Here's some more footage from the peaceful protests, as you can see. Not riots, but peaceful protests. So, hey, listen, I'm not attending any protests, but I believe people have a First Amendment right to gather and express their views, so that's fine. All right. Now, let's get back into some more salient news here, some stuff that actually will very likely affect us. Of course, protests in the U.S. Do affect us because there's always the potential for these things to turn violent. And again, this hasn't happened yet, but, we're heading into the winter months at least, let's say. So that tends to cool this kind of thing down. If this was happening in the summer, could be a whole other ball game. Let's see here. We got Hezbollah threatening to exact revenge against Israel for a strike which killed some civilians, some children in Lebanon. This is a real problem here, folks. We've got Hezbollah, the Shia militia trained and armed by Iran, operating out of Lebanon and Syria. Another sign that there is no diminishment in escalation there on the northern border. Should a third front really be opened up, it could be tremendously problematic for Israel. Likely would mean U.S. intervention in a very kinetic way with the USS Gerald Ford stationed just offshore there in the eastern Mediterranean. So there was an attack that was launched. Yeah, they fired a barrage of rockets into northern Israel in response, and you can see with this like tit for tat back and forth, between Hezbollah and Israel, there is always the possibility for a miscalculation and a major escalation there. That would be very problematic. Seems to me, though, we did hear from Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, in his speech on Friday, and while he was very, belligerent in his speech, he did stop short of declaring an all-out war on Israel. So, it may be that he doesn't want to see his forces and Lebanon wiped off the face of the earth, which is entirely possible should this conflict break out. So, maybe cooler heads will prevail here, but it's really the threat of a miscalculation with all of these U.S. forces there, all of these, back and forth exchanges that, somebody could cross a line here, and that would certainly be bad for everybody, including us. And, the price of gas could go to, double digits per gallon very easily should this occur. So we got Blinken, Secretary of State Blinken, traveling throughout the Middle East in an emergency visit to reassure anxious Arab allies, according to the Wall Street Journal here. And let's just get into this a little bit, because this is indicative of how there really is a strong possibility of unrest leading to an escalation if the governments of these Arab nations don't intervene in this conflict. It may be that their populations decide that a new government is in order, and so this is a real problem. You've got Blinken traveling around trying to assuage U.S. Interests in these Arab nations, but this is a difficult job, especially in light of the fact that attacks on U.S. troops continue to escalate. According to this report, there was a very near U.S. casualty from a recent attack in Iraq. A drone laden with explosives was found late last month, so the end of October, just a few days ago, lodged in the upper floors of U.S. barracks in Iraq. Came very close to killing American personnel. However, in this case, the explosives failed to detonate, and we know that there are those within the U.S. political establishment, such as Lindsey Graham, who have tried to draw a red line there, that if a U.S. military personnel are killed, several have already been injured in one of these attacks, then that would be a red line for U.S. intervention. What that means, I don't know. I mean, he's the same guy who has talked about attacking Iranian oil infrastructure. So keep that in mind. Again, this could pop off at any moment if an attack, and according to this article, which is from earlier today, there have already been 31 attacks on U.S. bases and personnel throughout the Middle East. I'm trying to 31 in Iraq and Syria. Of course, having these U.S. forces over there is kind of like making them a nice, big, juicy target. But, I mean, this is going to be bad if the U.S. suffers some significant casualties, not just some injuries. If U.S. troops are killed by one of these militias, then that will, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how it'll play out. I don't have a crystal ball, but I would anticipate that would mean a fairly significant kinetic response from the U.S., who has, a lot of military assets in the region now, growing number. And it looks, one of the reasons I think that the U.S. was kind of trying to push for a ceasefire or a kind of a slowdown on this push, they kept trying to get Israel to delay their Gaza invasion, was because they needed to get their assets in place. But now, according to the most recent reports, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, the second carrier strike group that is being deployed, has now reached the Middle East. So they've transited the Suez Canal, I suppose, and they are likely very close to, if not already in, the Persian Gulf. And so now that that asset is in place, by the way, several guided missile cruisers, I believe, in that carrier strike group. So, that would be what you would need for attacks on Iranian oil infrastructure. Of course, the Persian Gulf, another name for Iran is Persia. It's right there. So, it might be that the U.S., now that we've got more pieces in place, we've got these Patriot missile batteries and THAAD missile batteries throughout the Middle East and Saudi Arabia. We've been moving those into position. It may be that now, as these chess pieces are, where they need to be, we may be about to see a big escalation. And again, I'm not hoping that that's the case, but it's looking like nobody is backing down here, and the risk of a major escalation as the result of just some miscalculation by some fighter somewhere or some U.S. military personnel, I mean, who knows? The risk is there, folks, and so it's not something that we can disregard. And the reason it's so important is because if this happens, it's very likely that Iran will shut down the Straits of Hormuz, and the price of oil is going to skyrocket. 20% of global daily oil production flows through the Strait of Hormuz. It's a very narrow area, about 21 miles across. It's going to be a real problem. Now, this is another sign to me that there is potentially a major conflict on the way, the U.S. getting ready. So we've got this House Resolution 559 that was just passed by the U.S. House by a significant margin. And this is, the title is Declaring It as the Policy of the United States that a Nuclear Islamic Republic of Iran is not acceptable. I'm going to pull up the text here. We don't need to read the whole thing, although it's fairly short. I mean, if you're interested, I suggest you just Google it. You can find the text with the first thing that pops up on Google if you search for House Resolution 559. But basically, the thing you want to really draw your attention to here is the House of Representatives declares it is the policy of the United States that a nuclear Islamic Republic of Iran is not acceptable, that Iran must not be able to obtain a nuclear weapon under any circumstances or conditions. Number 3 here is really the kicker. To use all means necessary to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. So all means necessary, what does that mean? I mean, that means everything, I would imagine, right? Including up to and including nuclear weapons. So, tactical nuke, bunker busters, I mean, that would be included in all means necessary. To recognize and support the freedom of action of partners and allies, including Israel, to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. So, maybe it's going to be strikes by the U.S., maybe it'll be strikes by Israel, supported by the U.S., who knows? But listen, this is alarming that this was just passed to me. Now, there's some language in here about uranium enrichment. I'm not a physicist, I'm not a military guy, I don't really know how all of this works. My understanding is that they do have uranium enriched up to 60%, but I think you need something like 90% to actually make a weapon of this type. So, I don't know. This seems pretty hawkish to me, something that we should definitely be paying attention to. It's not like this is the first time we've seen this. Keep in mind, I mean, remember this, the Niger uranium forgeries. These were forged documents that were released in 2001 about Iraq procuring uranium from Africa, and this was used as a justification for the invasion of Iraq. I mean, it wasn't the only one, but this was the whole weapons of mass destruction thing with Saddam Hussein, and of course, these were forged documents, but look, history rhymes, that's all I'm saying, and the threat of, a Middle Eastern nation having weapons of mass destruction used as a justification for a war, well, this isn't the first time we've seen this, This is an interesting read, too, if you want to go read this on Wikipedia. I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but basically, forged documents were used as justification for a massive war. So, think about that. Now, Iran, also not really toning down the rhetoric at all. They are demanding that there is going to be a ceasefire in Gaza. Antony Blinken, as we talked about earlier, he is touring the Middle East. He has rejected a ceasefire. He says that it will give Hamas a chance to reorganize. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. Again, I'm not really passing judgment on any of this. I don't know if there should be a ceasefire or not, but it doesn't look like there's going to be one. That's the important fact we need to focus on here. And Iran has told us that the U.S. is going to be hit hard. So I don't know what you think that means. They've got hypersonic ballistic missiles. There's a bunch of U.S. carriers around. Likely they've got sleeper cells throughout the West. That's kind of their MO. So we got a big porous southern border where thousands or, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions, I don't really know how many people have crossed the border without detection, but a lot. And, I'm not saying they're all sleeper cells, but some of them could be. So, get prepared, folks. That's all I got to say about that. For potential, in this case, it's not going to really be the WROL. Am I doing that acronym right? Without rule of law situation. It will likely be the excessive rule of law if Iran pulls something like that. So keep that in mind. Now, let's just finish up talking about the markets. Look, we got crude oil, $81, silver, $23, gold, $2,000. These markets are shrugging off the risk of an escalation here. Now, look, I don't give financial advice. I think it's a great time personally to continue stacking hard assets. I will be doing that. I think also the derivatives of these commodities, energy producers in geopolitically safe environments, producers of gold and silver are also ripe for the pickings here. I think that this is a huge opportunity, that markets are discounting the risk of an escalation there. And if this conflict escalates, inflation's going to run out of control. The price of these commodities is going to move up. The price of everything is going to move up. And there's going to be a lot of problems in the economy from warfare. But I think that being able to get some of these assets right now might at least insulate you somewhat from some of those shocks. So that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you think. But thanks for tuning in tonight, everybody. That's it for this one. Stay safe and happy stacking, and I will catch you next time. Smart